My daughter didn't invite me to her wedding, then asked for my beach house. So my name is Richard Cole, and I am 68. When the invitation list went out, I learned about the wedding the same way I learn about most of my daughter's life these days. A photo on social media that someone else forwarded. White dress, vineyard, rented willow arch, the caption about soulmates and new beginnings. I zoomed in, as if the pixels might reveal my name hiding between the flowers. There was a table chart in the background. I looked for Dad. Nothing. No father-daughter dance. No toast. No seat anywhere. I didn't call. I sat in my kitchen, in the house where she took her first steps and once broke the sugar bowl with a badminton racket. And I felt something tired and heavy settle behind my ribs. I thought about the last time we spoke without the new fiancé present. It was a year ago, after my surgery. She sat in that same chair and picked at a chipped patch of varnish, asking whether she could help with the beach place. She said it lightly. I heard the rehearsed carefulness in her tone. Help with what, exactly? Sand? Taxes? Keys? When the wedding came and went, she posted a video of their first dance. I watched it twice, then put my phone face down and listened to the ocean inside the shell she once loved as a child. The house on Shoreline Avenue was her childhood compass point. She learned to swim there, learned to dive off the old wooden dock. Everything real in me lives in that house. So when she finally called, 4 days after the wedding, voice careful again, I answered and listened. Dad, she said, we want to spend our honeymoon at the beach house. We need a place to decompress. The hotels here are chaotic. We, not I, not your daughter who promised to always call you first. We. And decompress. After a wedding I wasn't invited to? I could hear a male voice in the background. He said something about closing the deal before Labor Day. My skin went cold. I kept my voice even. You didn't invite me to your wedding. Silence. Then the sound of her swallowing. It was complicated. You and Mom, and expenses, seating. You know how these things are, I did know. I knew what it meant to be trimmed for optics. I knew the price of appearances. I also knew my daughter used to cry when she couldn't fit her stuffed giraffe in her backpack because she didn't want to leave anyone out. Somewhere along the way, the backpack got small and her world got sharp. We need the house for 3 weeks, she said, just to breathe and reset. You're not using it. It's only fair. How could my own daughter use that word this way? How could she ask for the one place she knows is stitched to the best parts of us and pretend it's a timeshare? How could my own daughter do this to me? I said yes. I said yes because I wanted to look her in the eye, on my own ground, and understand what had happened to us. I said yes because something about the fiancés closing the deal scratched at me. I said yes because revenge for me is nothing like shouting in a driveway or throwing a glass. It is measured, quiet, and it leaves a record. When I hung up, I opened the old desk drawer where I keep documents. I slid out the leather folder with the property deed, the insurance, and the binder labeled Shoreline. I turned the binder to the back pocket. It held a single page, the one sheet everyone forgets exists until it matters, the occupancy addendum I filed after the surgery, the one confirming that any long-term stay requires my written consent and that any transfer of use for profit without my approval constitutes trespass. I remembered the lawyer's eyebrows when I asked for it. He said most people don't think that far ahead. I told him that's because most people haven't watched their family change in slow motion. They arrived 2 days later. She wore a sundress and the same perfume she used in college. He shook my hand with the grip of a new salesman. He had the kind of smile that knows where cameras are. He carried a leather tote and a drone case. He looked around like a surveyor. I made coffee. We sat at the old table. She said the house looked tired and suggested opening it up and getting better ROI on that view. He took out a tablet and started a list. Paint, staging, remodel bids. He never asked how I was. 3 weeks, I said. And no guests. Of course, she said. He smiled. We'll keep it pristine. I handed them the spare keys. I watched them cross the yard to the deck. His hand touched the rail as if checking its resale value. She turned once, as if to say thank you, then turned back to the sea. They moved in that afternoon. I slept in my small place in town and walked every morning by the water. On the second day, I noticed an unfamiliar car out front and a couple dragging rolling suitcases up the walkway. On the third day, I saw lights on and shadows moving in the north bedroom at midnight, more than 2 people. On the fourth day, a drone buzzed the shoreline and the fiancé stood in the yard narrating a walkthrough. Premier coastal property, sleeps 14, book now. He tilted the camera toward the street and panned across the house number. He didn't see me in the shadow of the old cypress. On the 5th day, a listing appeared online. Charming seaside estate, new host, prime weeks open. My house, my childhood photos blurred in the frame, my daughter's voice in the background, telling someone to move the Afghan because it dates the space. The rate per night was higher than most families save in a month. The caption said, "Owner approved." The contact number matched the fiancé's business site. They did not rent my house. They tried to convert it into an income stream. They did it while telling me they needed to breathe. I printed the listing. I printed the occupancy addendum. I printed 3 screenshots of the fiancé's business site promising exclusive coastal experiences. I placed them in the binder behind the page I'd kept for years. Then I waited for the weekend. They had a big check-in on Saturday. I watched the convoy of SUVs arrive. The guests carried coolers and neon pool floats. Someone dragged a karaoke machine. Over the laughter and the door slamming, I could hear my daughter say, "Just take care of the floors, please," in a voice that used to ask for bedtime stories. I let them settle. Then I walked up the path, unlocked the front door with my key, and stepped into my own foyer. The fiancé saw me first. His smile broke. The guests looked from him to me, unsure, their mouths full of chips. "House is closed," I said. My voice didn't rise. 10 minutes to leave. "Dad," my daughter said, making the words soft and warning in the same breath, "we have a contract." "You're making a scene." I set the binder on the entry table and turned the addendum toward the fiancé. He scanned it and laughed. Then he saw the signature. He stopped laughing. "You didn't tell me about that," he said to her, not to me. "I thought it was, what, old paper? You thought my name was ink you could scrub out?" My voice finally edged. "I said no guests. You spun it into a business. You broke into the rooms you were never allowed to change. You posted our photographs like props. This is our family too," she said, chin up. "We're building something." "You don't even use the house. Do you hear yourself?" I asked. "You cut me out of your wedding, then cut me into a calendar. The house isn't storage for your ambition. It's where your mother and I put the last good years we had together. It's where you learned to swim, not to sell." Guests started to shuffle. A woman put down a tray of deviled eggs and whispered to her husband. The fiancé tried a tone he probably used to close deals. Calm, reasonable, full of fake solutions. "Let's not escalate. We can split revenues. We can formalize. It's just a misunderstanding." I opened the second page. It was a letter I wrote the day after my surgery. I addressed it to no one and kept it just in case. It said that my house will always be a home first, and if anyone I love forgets that, they can go love somewhere else. It wasn't legal. It didn't need to be. I laid it next to the addendum. "You have 8 minutes," I said. "I'll help carry bags." He squared his shoulders. "You can't do this." "I already did," I said. "When I filed that addendum. When I kept the deed in my name after your scent walked into my kitchen with a tone that sounded like a loan application." My daughter started to cry. It wasn't the sound I remembered. It was smaller. "We needed the money," she said. "We're trying to start life right." I wanted to put my hand on hers. I didn't. You start life right by telling the truth, I said, not by listing someone else's house with a camera tilted to crop the owner out. They left in 9 minutes. The fiancé muttered that I'd be sorry. The guests apologized to me and offered help. One of them said she'd left a review begging other families to avoid the host. I thanked her and locked the door. The next morning, I poured coffee on the deck and watched gulls pull the sky apart. My daughter texted 3 times and called once. I didn't answer. At noon, a message came from a number I didn't recognize. It was a contractor. He had a written approval from the fiancé to open up the kitchen and needed the key. I told him to come by. I met him with the binder in hand and a copy of the addendum. I watched his face as he read. He thanked me for saving him from a lawsuit and forwarded me the work order. At the bottom, I saw my daughter's name copied. Her email was under the fiancé's domain. She wasn't just a bystander. She was part of the pitch. I did 2 things then. First, I moved back into the house. Second, I made a plan. I did not hire lawyers yet. I did not blow up the family chat. I called an old friend instead, a retired detective who fishes under the pier at dawn. He listened to my story, said he was sorry in the way people who've seen worse are sorry, and told me something useful. Keep records and invite sunlight. Sunlight came in 2 forms. The first was a family meeting. I scheduled it for the following Saturday and told my daughter it was about the future of the house. She agreed to come if the fiancé could join. I said, of course. The second was less polite. I printed the listing, the screenshots, the contractor work order, and I mailed a packet to myself. Postmarks matter. I also took photographs of the rooms, the drawers they'd rearranged, the closet where they'd stuffed my wife's old quilts into a box labeled dated linens. When Saturday came, my daughter and the fiancé arrived dressed as if for a negotiation. She carried a folder. He carried confidence. We sat at the table, the same table where she once did homework while I fixed the wobbly leg. The same table where, after the surgery, she stroked the wood grain and asked about helping with the beach place. I let the silence run long enough to fill the room. Before we talk, I said, I have something to show you. I slid the printed listing across the table, then the contractor's work order, then the addendum. Her lips made a small O. He leaned back and tried to smile. We can still work with this, he said. We can make you money. You're asset-rich and cash-light. There's a way to make everyone happy. Here was the second hook, the twist I hadn't wanted and now welcomed. I picked up the tablet I'd placed by my elbow and hit play. The screen showed a recording of the fiancé's drone walkthrough, the version he didn't post, the one he rehearsed while he thought no one was listening. He stood on my deck and called the place an untapped steal, laughed about old men who don't even use what they have, and said, "Give it 6 months. He'll sign anything to feel included." My daughter's face drained. The fiancé went still and then furious. "You recorded me? That's illegal." "You recorded yourself," I said, "and posted the edited version." Privacy is strange like that. She looked at him. It was the first time she looked at him like he might be a stranger. "You said we'd talk to him," she said softly. "You said we'd bring him in." He shot back. "We did. We tried. He's stubborn. We have to build our life." "Our life?" she said. "At the price of his?" He rolled his eyes, then turned to me, and the polish dropped. "What do you want? Money? A share? Naming rights to a guest suite?" "I want my daughter back," I said, "but that's not something you can sell me. So I'll settle for the house intact and a record of what you plan to do, and I want you to leave her out of your schemes." He laughed again, but it was brittle. "You can't force her." "Stop," she said. Her voice cracked like the shell of the life she'd wrapped around herself. "Enough." We sat with that word. Then I laid out my terms, simple and clean. "You will remove every listing today," I said to him. You will send a message to every person who booked explaining that you misrepresented your rights to the property and you are refunding them. You will copy me on the emails. You will sign a statement acknowledging you acted without consent. You will apologize to my daughter for using her credentials to build your site, and then you will leave this house. You can't make me do any of that." "You're right," I said. "But the police can, and so can a civil judge. And if you think I'm bluffing, you're about to discover how methodical an old man can be. I have time and I have patience. You have neither." I slid the envelope I'd mailed to myself across the table and opened it. Postmark. Contents. He watched his own confidence fold in on itself. He tried to turn to my daughter and rally. "He's manipulating you." "We're a team." She stared at the photographs of the quilts in the box. She put her hand over her mouth. When she spoke, her voice had the weight of the girl who used to apologize to ants for stepping on their hills. "I can't be the kind of person who would do this to my father," she said. "I won't be." I looked away because I didn't trust my face. She took out her phone and began deleting. The fiancé fumed. He muttered threats. Defamation. Elderly. Overreacting. And each word shrank in the room, as if the house itself was correcting him. He finally stood. "This isn't over." "For you it might not be," I said. "For us it is." He left. The door closed. The tide outside smacked the pilings, the old rhythm that never changed. My daughter stayed at the table, shoulders trembling. We sat there for a long time. She told me things I didn't know about the last 2 years. How they'd run up celebratory debts. How the wedding had become a stage they couldn't afford to step down from. How she'd convinced herself that not inviting me would simplify things, because the fiancé said divorced parents at weddings complicate optics. She told me she'd believed him when he said I wouldn't notice the listings, that I'd be grateful when a check arrived. "Do you forgive me?" she asked at the end, the way a person asks for a door to open that they're not sure is still there. Forgiveness is not a switch. It's a gate that opens and swings shut with the wind until someone fixes the hinge. But repair is not revenge. Revenge is justice with a memory. I took a breath and told her the truth. "I forgive the child you were," I said. "I don't forgive what you did." "Not yet. That will take time. And work." "What work?" "You'll write to every person who checked in and apologize. You'll explain what happened without blaming anyone but us. You'll help me restore this house to the way it was. You'll make a donation, in your name, to the women's shelter your mother used to support, using the money you would have made from the rentals you tried to book." She nodded. "I will." "And there's one more thing," I said. I went to the closet and brought out a small wooden box. Inside sat the original key to the beach house, the one with the brass tag I'd engraved the week she was born. "For when you're ready." I set it on the table between us. "I'm not giving you this now," I said. "I'm telling you it exists. And I'm telling you what it will mean if one day I do give it to you. It means you understand that a house is a promise, not a product. It means you remember where the quilts go. It means you invite your father to your daughter's wedding, if she ever chooses to marry." She cried. I didn't hug her. Not yet. Instead, we worked. We took down the drone footage and replaced the listing photographs with blank images that said, "Removed by owner." She wrote to the guests. I watched as she typed without justifications. She drove to the shelter and handed over a check. The director called me that evening and told me she had met my daughter years ago when she brought canned goods with her mother. She said the circle felt complete. I exhaled for the first time in a week. A day later, the fiancé sent me a single text. "You'll regret this." I archived it with the rest of the records. Then I received a very different message from one of his business partners, forwarding me a thread in which the fiancé bragged about leveraging inherited assets and aging gatekeepers. The partner apologized and dissolved their arrangement. Sunlight, as my fisherman friend said, does its job. I didn't press charges. I didn't sue. I could have. Perhaps some will say I should have. Justice, for me, was not a verdict delivered by a stranger in a black robe. It was the boundary restored, the record kept, the behavior changed, and the door between my daughter and me set on new hinges. It was also something else. On the last evening of that week, I walked down to the dock with the quilts under my arm. I spread them on the boards and sat with my daughter as the sun pushed a path across the water, the way it always does, indifferent to our small storms. She told me she was leaving him. I believed her because she said it quietly and without drama, the way hard decisions are made when the show is over. "What happens to the beach house when you're gone?" she asked, without looking at me, as if the water might answer. "I wrote it into a trust for your children," I said. "Not to sell, not to rent, to use and to keep. If you want in on that, you have to show me you understand." "I will," she said. "Show me," I said. Over the next months, she did. She came on odd Tuesdays to scrub the sand from the tub. She mended a tear in one of the quilts and put it back exactly where it belonged. She stopped performing for cameras and started showing up for work that no one applauds. She sent me pictures when a storm knocked down part of the fence, but not for sympathy, for supplies. She learned the names of the local fishermen and bought their catch, the way her mother used to do. She began to live inside the house again instead of using it as a backdrop. I changed the locks, not to keep her out, but to keep opportunists from thinking there might be a key under the mat. I kept the binder updated. I added one more page, a letter to my grandchildren explaining why the house must remain a home. I signed it and dated it. I slept better. As for the fiancé, he tried one more trick. He sent a demand letter through a cut-rate legal service threatening to sue for lost income and emotional distress. He referenced agreements we never made. He spelled my name wrong. I filed the letter in the binder under noise and sent a one-sentence reply. "Cease all contact. Your claims are without merit and documented." I copied the business partner who had written to me. I heard nothing after that. 6 months later, my daughter knocked on my door on a Tuesday. She came in without her keys, which she had left in a small bowl by the sink. She sat at the table and looked at the space where the binder usually sits. "I think I earned it," she said softly. "Why?" I asked. Not a challenge. A test she could pass with honesty. "Because I know what it costs to keep a promise," she said. "Because I won't use this place to pretend to be someone I'm not. Because I invited you to my friend's ceremony last week and we danced badly and I loved it. Because I want my children to know you on this deck, not through photos edited for strangers. Because I broke something, and I did the work to fix it." I went to the closet. I took out the wooden box. I set it on the table and opened it. The brass tag caught the light. "Don't make me regret this," I said. "I won't," she said. I put the key in her hand. It felt like placing a small, important animal back into the wild. That weekend, we hosted the family together, not as hosts and renters, as father and daughter. The quilts were on the beds, the photographs were back on the walls. There was no staging, only life. We grilled, we argued about the correct ratio of lemon to butter, we laughed at old stories that do not improve with retelling, but still matter because they are ours. At sunset, my daughter stood on the dock and watched her children splash in the shallows where she learned to swim. She turned to me and said, "Thank you for not selling me the easy way out." Justice did not look like a courtroom. It looked like my house not being turned into a brochure. It looked like my daughter remembering how to come home. It looked like a binder with dates and signatures that will outlast my voice. It looked like me, a 68-year-old man who knows his limits but also his worth, sitting in a chair at a table he repaired 100 times, eating corn cut off the cob because his teeth are not what they were, watching a family earn its place honestly. I don't tell this to humble anyone or to teach a lesson. I tell it because some betrayals are dressed up as business plans, and some revenges are simply the slow, steady act of refusing to surrender what makes you a family. I tell it because someone will read this and hear their own sea, and I want them to know that a calm voice, a paper trail, and a door held open only when it should be, can be enough. That night, after everyone left and the house settled into its old bones, I walked to the dock alone. The tide was high. The moon pulled a white road across the water. I thought about the wedding I didn't attend, the dance I didn't dance. I thought about the dance we did later, awkward and necessary. I thought about the key in my daughter's pocket and the hinge on the door that swung without a squeak. I went back inside, closed the binder, and put it on the shelf. Then I turned off the lights, one by one, and let the house sleep. Justice had been done, the kind that doesn't need a verdict because it lives in the choices we make when no one is watching. And in the morning, when the gulls started their racket and the sun pushed the path again, I made coffee and waited for the sound of my daughter's feet on the deck. Not as an intruder or a renter, but as what she finally chose to be again. My child, coming home.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.